We left off with the descendants of Abraham enslaved in Egypt. In this episode, we will examine materials relating to the books of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The descendants of Abraham migrated to Egypt in a time of famine and found help from Joseph, one of Jacob's 12 sons. Earlier, the sons of Jacob had sold Joseph into slavery, yet he became an important figure in the Egyptian government and could offer his family assistance. In time, however, Joseph passed, and over time the descendants of Abraham became a great multitude that became enslaved in this foreign land. Exodus 2:23 and 24 tells us that the descendants of Jacob, or the Israelites, groaned under their slavery, and this cry rose up to God, who remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This brings us to the next major figure in the story of the Bible, Moses. Moses was sent by God to deliver the children of Israel from Egypt. He was an Israelite who had been raised in Pharaoh's household, but had been compelled to flee. It was as a shepherd that God called Moses to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt and into the land promised to Abraham. In order to do so, God enabled Moses to do many mighty acts in an effort to convince Pharaoh to free them from their bondage. God also unleashed a series of plagues designed to demonstrate that the gods of Egypt were powerless in the face of the God of Israel. The most significant of these demonstrations led to the creation of Passover. God told Moses that he was going to kill all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. The children of Israel would be spared by marking the lintels and doorposts of their homes with the blood of a sacrificial lamb. This blood would protect them from the judgment that would fall on Egypt. In Exodus 6:6, God described freeing the children of Israel from their bondage by using the word redeem. There are different nuances to this term. It often refers to the notion of purchasing back something that was once yours. One simple way to think about it is to read Exodus 6:6, where the Lord says, quote, "I will free you from the burdens of the Egyptians and deliver you from slavery to them. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with mighty acts of judgment." End quote. On the night of the Passover, Israel's firstborn were freed or redeemed from the danger of death by the blood of sacrificial lambs. Moreover, through Moses, God proclaimed to Pharaoh, quote, "Israel is my firstborn son." Pharaoh did indeed release the children of Israel, but then determined to bring them back under his control. They escaped across the Red Sea. God parted the waters long enough for them to pass through, but not long enough for Pharaoh's army to catch them. Like the book in which this story is found, these events are referred to as the Exodus. Throughout the rest of the Old Testament, these events shaped how the term salvation is understood. Salvation and deliverance are more or less synonyms. After the Red Sea closed behind them, the children of Israel sang a song that proclaimed, "God has become my salvation." In the wake of the Exodus, Moses and the Israelites began their journey to the lands that had been promised to Abraham. On the way, two crucial developments took place. The first is that God, through Moses as a mediator, established a covenant with Israel. A number of scholars have pointed out that this covenant has features that were well known in the ancient Near East. Typically, these covenants contain the following components: a historical prologue describing the relationship between the parties, a set of stipulations or obligations, rewards and sanctions, a witness section, and documentation. We can see all of these in the covenant between God and his people Israel. When we look at the giving of the law and the Ten Commandments, we find the historical prologue involves a description of the Exodus. Quote, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery." End quote. Throughout the Old Testament, especially in Psalms, One can find statements that point back to the Exodus. In some ways it stood as a kind of defining event through which the children of Israel understood their relationship with God. It is worth noting that God delivered Israel before he gave them the law. The Ten Commandments and the law are the stipulations or obligations of the covenant. One can divide them into the moral laws that define right and wrong, holiness laws that distinguish the Israelites from those around them and remind them that they are set aside for God, and ceremonial laws that relate to the temple. There are a series of sanctions that describe both the blessings that would accompany keeping the law and the curses that would come from failing to keep it. In Deuteronomy 30:19 and 20, we find a witness section when Moses stated, "I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Choose life so that you and your descendants may live, loving the Lord your God, obeying him, and holding fast to him, for that means life to you and length of days, that you may live in the land that the Lord swore to give to your ancestors, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob." The tablets complete the picture as the documentation of the covenant. There is a sense in which the law became for the Israelites one of the main ways that God was known, and one could say present in the covenant community. The second crucial development is the way that God established his presence among his people through a temple. Those who trusted in God from Noah through Moses had built various altars where they worshipped God. After God's revelation of himself to Moses at Sinai, the temple became the focus of the worship of God and where his presence was manifest. Access to the presence of God in the temple was regulated by law and mediated by a priestly class. After the Exodus, Moses and the children of Israel came close to entering the lands promised to Abraham. But just as they were about to enter, they were overcome by fear at a place known as Kadesh Barnea. As a result, they ended up wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Moses died before he could enter into the promise, even though he came close enough to see it. In the next episode, we will begin with the story of Joshua, and then turn to the establishment of a kingdom. When we look back at these developments from the perspective of the Christian faith, we find them rich with meaning. In Jesus we find redemption and deliverance from the spiritual powers that oppress us. As our sacrificial lamb, Jesus protects us from the judgment that will fall on those powers. Jesus is described as the mediator of a new covenant, and when we seek to be reminded of the nature of that covenant, we look back to the cross and to the resurrection.